Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino Paris 21 here, and back again with yet another deck profile for you all. So, of course, what I have for you guys is my newly built Aqua Force deck for post-set 15, of course. But for this time around, of course, we are going to be going back to the OG of Aqua Force himself, Maelstrom. Still one of the best artworks in the game, in my opinion. Definitely love the artwork, and I still think he's a very fantastic card. But of course, you know, this time around with Maelstrom, he's definitely gotten a nice little makeover in the form of a new cross ride, being Maelstrom Reverse. So I think that with Maelstrom Reverse in comparison to Glory Maelstrom, Maelstrom Reverse really is the ideal cross ride for Maelstrom, and you know, for good reason. You know, for one, both their skills really synergize with what Aqua Force is all about, and I think that these two really can combo pretty well with each other, in the sense that, you know, pressuring your opponent with Maelstrom and then following up with Maelstrom Reverse to kind of help clean out the game for you. So both these two really synergize very well with each other, and while I think that Glory Maelstrom is still a pretty amazing card in a lot of cases, I felt that just Maelstrom Reverse was really the counterpart to Maelstrom that, you know, all of us Aqua Force players have been waiting for. So, yeah, without further ado, let's actually get started. Alright, so of course, to start things off with a starter, we have our Blue Storm Cadet Marios, the newly introduced starter for post-set 15 for Aqua Force. Now, as you guys should probably know if you're familiar with all my previous builds for Aqua Force, I've been playing Officer Cadet Eric for the longest time, ever since the beginning, just because Officer Cadet Eric was just the more ideal starter compared to, you know, all the other starters that Aqua Force has been getting. But, you know, Eric was just a lot more consistent. And Mario's kind of just helps add to that reason of why I played Eric for the consistency. But Mario's, of course, what I like is he's a 5k booster, so really good stats. And he, of course, you know, goes really well with the theme of the deck. And what I like is skill is essentially for free if you can meet the conditions. So that skill is when an attack hits a Vanguard during the battle that this unit boosted, and you have an Aqua Force Vanguard, of course, if it's the third battle of the turn or more, you get to check the top 5 for a Maelstrom and add it to your hand. Now, of course, this starter could be a little bit better. I was kind of, you know, hoping that he would be kind of like how the Blau starter is, where, you know, you could check top 5 and get a Blue Storm card to your hand, just like how the Blau starter searches for Blau cards. So I felt like he could have been a little bit better, and I wouldn't even mind paying like a Counterblast or so. You know, just make this cost slightly higher so that, you know, I think the starter could be better. But nonetheless, I think the starter is very solid. Just being able to fish for your grade 3s is always nice for the consistency sake of the deck. There are times where Mario's did actually save me, you know, from getting grade locked, and there can be, of course, since he is pretty conditional getting that third battle or more, I wouldn't necessarily rely on him to maybe getting you out of grade stuck and such, just because sometimes you may not have a good hand to really meet his conditions a lot of times. But what I like, of course, like I said, it helps you just get your cross ride off, if need be, or just get your Maelstrom Reverse. And most importantly, like I always say with Aqua Force, grade 3s are never dead for you. So, I mean, if you're able to get a free 11k beater, that's a free beater for yourself. So while your opponent keeps wailing on your rear guards, you have a free beater to replace them with. So definitely a very, very nice starter. So really like him a lot. Now, moving on to grade 3s, of course, we have, well, the OG himself, as you guys should already know, your 4 Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom. So I've got, in case you guys need a reminder, what he does, it's Limit Break 4, when his attack hits when he attacks your opponent's Vanguard, and he is the 4th battle or more, he gains the red text ability, as you see here, which reads, when he successfully hits your opponent's Vanguard, you get to Counterblast 1, draw a card, and retire one of your opponent's rear guard. So, still a very pressuring card, just with a very powerful on-hit ability, netting you a +2 if your opponent lets it hit. So it's really, really nice, and he works really well with the starter if he's able to hit, because obviously you get a free draw off the Maelstrom, but it gives you another search to get more beaters, so it can lead to some more pluses for yourself. And of course, for his Crossfight counterpart, or evil counterpart, I guess you can say, you have your Maelstrom Reverse, and I'm not going to say the full name because it's too long. So yeah, Maelstrom Reverse, really, really fantastic card, and there's definitely a lot of great things I have to say about it, but like I said earlier, Maelstrom Reverse is really the ideal counterpart to Maelstrom. So what he does is Limit Break 4, when he attacks your opponent's Vanguard and is the 4th battle or more, you Counterblast 1, rest one of your already standing Aqua Force rear guards. That's actually very important. Lock it, and then until the end of the turn, or until the end of the battle, he gains the red text ability of, that you see here, of if he gains plus 5,000 in a crit, and at the end of the battle, if he did not hit your opponent, you get to retire, and you get to draw and then retire one. So essentially, they kind of work opposites of each other. So obviously if Maelstrom hits, you get to retire and draw. And of course with Maelstrom Reverse, if he doesn't hit, he gains plus 5 in a crit, and if he doesn't hit, then you retire and draw. So it's really, really nice. Because usually by the time I'm cross-riding with Maelstrom Reverse, I'm already like, my opponent's usually already at like, let's say maybe 4 or more, hopefully. So my opponent's already inclined to, you know, continuously guard him, and it allows me to build that free advantage late in the game. And, you know, with Maelstrom, a big difference with Maelstrom and Tetra Dragon is that, you know, Maelstrom is a little bit slower paced in terms of closing out games, but he can definitely, you know, grind out a lot of games for you. And there are plenty of times where, you know, I was very behind, but just, you know, sitting on Maelstrom for 2 turns, having him hit for maybe a few times, and then following up with Maelstrom Reverse just allowed me to climb out of a lot of games for me. So, so yeah, I really, really love these 2 cards in tandem with each other. Now, of course, as you see, I don't play Glory Maelstrom. I don't like Glory Maelstrom in this deck, just because, as you're gonna see with my grade 1 lineup, I don't play Dorothea, which is like the 10k booster, and, you know, unless you're playing a 10k booster behind your Glory Maelstrom, he's not hitting for any threatening numbers. While, yes, on paper it sounds like it's great, being that, you know, opposite Silent Time effect, but, I mean, if you're not really hitting for that big number, like 26, 28, your opponent, all your opponent has to do is throw 2 10s down for 2 to pass, which is usually what they do anyway for your Vanguard. So there's a lot of inconsistencies to how effective Glory Maelstrom is in this build. So I think the 4/4 is a lot better. It's just a lot better for this deck. And of course, I don't play Diamantes in this deck just because, I mean, one, I don't really see the need for him anymore, especially with some new support cards for Aqua Force, and I didn't really find the need for him, like I said, and it was really hard to find room for him. So I think just the 4/4 is very, very solid for the deck. Now, moving on to grade 2s. So of course, what we have for grade 2s is, of course, like one of the absolute best grade 2s in the game, your 4 Tidal Assaults. So just a reminder, if you guys don't remember what he does, or don't know what he does, is at the end of the battle that he attacks your opponent's Vanguard, doesn't have to hit, you get to stand him up and he loses 5k power. So it's very powerful. What makes Tidal Assault cores very powerful is just like that early turn. So, you know, if let's say you go first and, you know, you're first to go to your grade 2 before your opponent's usually going to be sitting on like a 7k or 8k Vanguard anyway, so putting Tidal Assault in the rear guard, just getting 2 easy attacks on your opponent, potentially 2 damage by himself, or like 2 cards out of your opponent's hand if they want to guard him. Very, very amazing. But most importantly, he's an enabler for the deck, so it allows you to get those 4th attacks, that 4th attack off for your main bosses. So definitely a very fantastic card. Definitely got to play 4 of. The next, of course, is a card that us Aqua Force players have been winning for quite some time, and that is 12k attackers in the form of Blue Storm, Marine General Gregorios. I'm really bad with names, guys. So yeah, 12k attacker if you have a Blue Storm Vanguard. Something, like I said, Aqua Force has been waiting for, because now they have more access to different standalone attackers, which is very important for the deck. So yeah, 12k attacker is always good. Then next, of course, I am playing another like OG original card. You have your Storm Rider Basil. Now, I know Basil does get a lot of, I guess, love and hate by the Aqua Force community and such, just because of his cons. But again, if you guys don't know what he does, is when he attacks your opponent's Vanguard and it is the first battle of the turn, he gains plus 2,000, so he essentially attacks for 10, and then he switches with a unit in the same column as him. So still a very amazing card. Just so, again, another enabler for your main bosses. One thing you got to keep in mind, guys, is that it's very important to make sure that you can enable that 4th battle for these guys, because your boss is your win condition, as most other decks. So you definitely got to keep in mind that making sure that you can enable that 4th battle as consistently as possible and frequently as possible is important. So one thing I like with the Basil course, it's free. It's free to use, which is great. But most importantly, as one of my good buddies, Clay Smith, also known as Cardfight King, always says, which I fully 100% agree on, Basil hides himself. He's like probably the best enabler in terms of protecting himself, just because obviously when he attacks, he hides in the back. So a problem with Tidal Assault that I sometimes have is if I'm relying too much on a Tidal Assault, my opponents will always be attacking him constantly, and especially how easy it is to make a 90k column, especially with like most subclans now getting 12k attackers. It's very easy to pressure a Tidal Assault and then force out my hand, which is something that I don't want to do. I want to be the one forcing out my opponent's hand, so there could be issues if you're trying to rely on a Tidal Assault. So Basil, he's able to, of course, you know, get enabled that 4th attack for free, but he hides himself in the back row. So unless you're playing Kagero or something that can snipe out a grade 2 in the back, then I mean he'll be very safe for you. He will be a guaranteed 4th battle every turn. So that's one thing I like with him a lot. Now, of course, the cons is yes, he only hits for 10, which most Vanguards, yes, I know, he hits for 11k and higher. I mean, I'm sure that there's gonna be guys commentating this, and I always hear it constantly, but like I said, he's a very important enabler for the deck for the reasons I explained. So definitely like the 2 Basil in here. And last but not least, I have another new support card for set 15. Is your 2 Blue Storm Marine General Spyros. So what Spyros does is at the end of the battle that he is the first or second battle, and he attacks your opponent's Vanguard, you special counterblast 1 Blue Storm in your damage zone and then stand him up. So one thing I kind of like with him is that he does allow you to get kind of like 2 guaranteed attacks by himself, because, you know, if you attack your opponent's Vanguard with the booster first, you know, hitting for like 16, and then you can stand him up, and then being that he's a decent 9k, he can usually attack like a 9k grade 2 that your opponent may have in the front row, so it's almost 2 guaranteed attacks. But the reason why I only like 2 of is that the fact is that he does use a counterblast. So he is kind of like one of my last resorts in terms of being an enabler for my 4th battle for my main bosses. So you definitely want to use him sparingly, just because you know, this deck is very tight with its counterblast, being that you always want to be abusing Maelstrom Reverse most of the time. So, like I said, you got to make sure you use it sparingly. And, oh yeah, one thing to keep in mind is that you can only use a skill when you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard. So, it's not even that great for early rush options necessarily. So, I think that this as a 2 is perfectly fine. So, yep, that is my grade 2 lineup. So, yep, 12 grade 2s. And next, of course, we have our grade 1s. Now, for grade 1s, we have our 3 Perfect Guards, and I am playing the 1 Quintet Wall. So I was initially, of course, iffy with the Quintet Wall, just because, you know, if you're resolving Maelstrom Reverse, you know, multiple times through the course of a game, you can give yourself the potential to deck out just because you're drawing through your deck so much. Especially in combination with the starter, you are thinning out your deck a lot. But I didn't find the Quintet Wall. I did not even find myself that hindered by the Quintet Wall as much as I thought. One thing though, of course, is like I said, the counterblasting is very tight in this deck. So there are times where, you know, there were like maybe 2 occasions in the few tournaments I was testing this deck in where the Quintet Wall, I kind of was iffy on using it or not, just because I kind of had to decide between using the Quintet Wall or Maelstrom Reverse. But like I said, guys, I think what I like the Quintet Wall though, and what made me keep it in the deck, is that it did save me a few games where, you know, I didn't have a huge hand size at all. You know, my opponent, like, you know, I kind of like drew bad, so I was kind of late to getting my skills off, so I was kind of low in hand size. So he was able to be that 1 card out to block a really huge column my opponent was throwing it at me. So he was actually able to save me a few games. So that's kind of the main reason why I kept it in. So, but yeah, I think 4 Perfect Guards could be more optimal, but personally, I like the Quintet Wall through the testing I've done. Next, of course, you have still a very fantastic card, Wheel Assault. So Wheel Assault, again, it's another enabler for the deck. Very, very last resort, being that he caused a counterblast. But what he does is, at the end of the battle that he boosted in Aqua Force, doesn't have to hit, you get to counterblast 1 and switch to your rear guards. So obviously, if you have him boosting in Aqua Force in the opposite rear guard column as another column, let's say, that has like 2 beaters on the field, you obviously attack with this, you obviously attack with the front row, attack with the boosted Wheel Assault, and then you can switch these. So it allows you to get 4th battle if you need to. But like I said, you want to use it as a last resort. But there are times though where I actually just use the Wheel Assault just to kind of close the game based on that kind of like formation I just showed you guys. Just because, you know, I kind of already grinded out my opponent, out resourced him already with Maelstrom Reverse. So there wasn't really much reason to use Maelstrom Reverse anymore. Anymore. So I kind of just used my Counterblast for Wheel Assault just to help close out the game for me. So yeah, Wheel Assault's still a very fantastic card. Then of course you have your 3 Blue Storm Marine General Hermes. Again, another standalone 10k attacker, something that Aqua Force was really wanting. So yeah, really glad that we finally have these. And then last but not least, this is kind of like my little tech for the deck, of course, is your Storm Rider Eugen. So Eugen works the same as Basil, where when he attacks and he's the first battle, gains +2, and then you switch it. So he hits only for 8k, but it's kind of very interesting because it's a nice first turn enabler if you have the hand for it, just to get off your starter, maybe a little earlier than expected. But it's nice just to rush a little bit earlier if you like go first and dealing with your opponent's grade 1 Vanguard. But again, it's just another and free enabler in the deck. And what's nice is, you know, being that he's a grade 1, he can also boost for you. So you can still boost for hitting for decent numbers. You know, if you could at least put a 10k or plus unit in front of him, he still hits for that 16k plus column, which is still ideal. And, you know, kind of like when you run out of resources or other units to enable, like you don't have Basils, you don't have Tidal Assaults and such, you can just move him on front and then use him as an enabler. So it's another card, just like I said with Basil, that hides himself, but he can still be a useful booster if need be. So it's very versatile. And although he only hits for 8, like I said, just the fact is you're enabling the 4th battle is what's important. And combining him with the Margle clone draw trigger, he can actually hit for 11, which is kind of hilarious when I did that on some of my opponents. So yeah, definitely very fantastic card in the deck. I definitely recommend giving him a try if you hadn't already. And then last but not least, of course, we have my triggers, which is pretty straightforward. I was actually experimenting with the different combinations and such, you know, in comparison to my previous Maelstrom decks. But like I said, the deck definitely took a different direction now that, you know, you're not really using Glory Maelstrom anymore. So my triggers, of course, we have your 4 Blue Storm stands, 2 Dolphins, because Dolphin's OP, and 2 Seagull Soldier, because, well, Seagulls are OP, even though it kind of looks like a Penguins, and Penguins are cooler, but yeah. So 8 stand, 4 draw. You definitely have to play these draw triggers. Malika being that Margle clone, so put in Soul, give a unit +3, very, very key. Obviously giving it to like your Tidal Assault so they can actually get some guaranteed hits, or my favorite target is using it with Basil because it hits for 13 against cross rides, or even Eugen, which is pretty hilarious for hitting for 11, but definitely it's a must to play. And then your 4 Chef heals. Really was sad I had to take out my Sexy Leg heals because I like those better, but you definitely got to play these for the Blue Storm. In fact, he's a Blue Storm, so it works for Spyros as being a special Counterblast. But yeah, no crits in here because dating back to like the original set 8 Aqua Force, you know, with Maelstrom, you play it the same way with Maelstrom Reverse and Maelstrom, being that your Vanguard's always going to be the last unit to be attacking on your field, and all your units are going to be rested. So just having more stand triggers just allows you to get those extra attacks off, and crits can be a little bit inconsistent. And theoretically, I like the crits just because you can pressure your opponent at like, you know, 3 damage with Maelstrom Reverse and force them to block it, but and then you can really surprise your opponent if they no guard you at 3 with Maelstrom Reverse. But what I found is that my opponent kind of just, they YOLO so much by like no guarding at 3, and you know, if I don't hit the crit, then it's kind of worthless because then I'll end up hitting the crit later, which it doesn't matter, and it ends up being a dead trigger most of the time. So I didn't really care too much about having the crits, so I think the stand triggers are just a lot more consistent for the deck, and stand triggers is very needed because you definitely need it to help close out the games late game. Like I said, this deck can be pretty slow at closing out a game. So yeah, there you have it, guys. So that is my deck profile for you guys. And of course, before I actually let you guys go, I'm going to go ahead and go through a few different combos and formations I go about for the deck. Because there's definitely a few plays you can go about. So let me go ahead and show you guys some of those. Alright guys, so what I'm going to show you is a few basic setups I kind of go for when playing Maelstrom Reverse. And, you know, like I said with Maelstrom Reverse, one thing that can get kind of tricky with him is the fact is that for one of his conditions for his cost to enable his skill, you have to rest and lock an Aqua Force rearguard. So that means that one of your rearguards is not going to either be able to boost or, I guess, attack, but mostly you usually lock your boosters anyway, so that means you're going to be sacrificing a booster for the turn. Now, the fact is that he does gain +5 in a crit makes it so that you can easily just lock the Vanguard booster, but there's some cases where you can kind of, if you're a little bit creative with your setups, you can actually still have the booster for your Vanguards hitting for a bigger number, but also at the same time, you're not really sacrificing much in terms of your offensive potency. So I'm just going to show you guys a few basic setups I usually go for the deck. So what I have here is a very simple one with Tidal Assault. So just to show you guys just a simple example is, first, use Tidal Assault to attack your opponent's Vanguard. It won't hit, of course. stand him up, loses 5k, so you just attack for 11. Usually I attack a interceptor if I can help it, or just attack the Vanguard. It doesn't really matter that much. So I'll probably like attack an interceptor, and then depending if my opponent's at 4 or 5, I usually, if my opponent, let's say, is at 5, a lot of times I'll just attack with this boosted just to force out a 10k shield. But if my opponent is at 4 damage, it kind of depends on your opponent's setup and their situation, but if my opponent's at 4 damage, sometimes I'll just attack unboosted to my opponent's Vanguard, just because if they happen to let the hit go, then I kind of gain value, because now I can use this to boost my Maelstrom Reverse and use this to lock. So I kind of gain value because it's almost the same as my opponent let the attack through if I boosted. So that's kind of like one thought I usually do. But a lot of times though, if they're at 4 damage, I'll just attack boosted just to help further guarantee the hit, or it baits out 10k shield. And then of course, you know, with all these rested, you attack in Maelstrom Reverse. It's the 4th battle. So then count boss 1, rest his Vanguard booster, and then you lock it. So then it will be 16 or 18 crit 2. So you kind of just keep doing that through the course of multiple turns, and then obviously Maelstrom Reverse is not expected to hit, being that it's later in the game. So you end up just getting some nice pluses that just adds up through the course of the turn, and then eventually your opponent really can't handle, you know, dealing with all these multiple attacks and such, and hitting a few stand triggers on the way can help close out the game. But yeah, like I said, guys, this is a very, very simple setup. Now, this is another one I really like doing, and this is actually using Basil or Eugen. But let's use Eugen for the hilarity of him. Eugen, this, and let's use this. So let's say throughout the course of the game, you know, I had a Eugen here just boosting for my units, and let's say I already have this on the field. So him with the 12k attacker, of course, hits for a nice 18k number. And you know what I like is the fact with Eugen is that the fact that he's sitting back here, I can freely know that I'm always going to have a guaranteed enabler for myself, so that I can freely call my tidal assaults, my spirals and such in front, and not worrying about, you know, losing him, because I already have a guaranteed enabler. So what's nice is that, you know, my opponents will constantly, you know, attack the tidal assault thinking that they're helping their cause when they're really not. So it's a nice damage sponge. So let's say my opponent attacked my tidal assault, and I end up having another one anyway. Let me find it. So I have another one, so I'll call it. Or let's actually do this first. So first I call the draw trigger, the Marvel clone, and then I put it in Soul to give Eugen +3, and then I call a tidal assault. So here's pretty much what you do. So you use Eugen to attack your opponent for 11k, which is a nice number. And of course we're assuming that opponent's is at 11k Vanguard, which is why we're doing this. And then you use your general to attack for 12 at an interceptor or something like that. And here's what's really fun with using like a Storm Rider with a tidal assault, is you can attack boosted with your tidal assault to your opponent's Vanguard, hitting for a nice 16 number, and then your tidal assault skill, you can just stand it up. So it gets -5, 4k, but what's important is that now he's a standing Aqua Force rearguard that you can now use for Maelstrom Reverse. So you just lock him. And what's nice is that since you have a nice 12k attacker here, he's a great target for all your stand triggers as well. So you can hit your stand triggers, stand him up and such. And if you hit like a double stand trigger, well then Eugen is still a booster. That's still got a +3, so you can actually hit for a nice number, which is pretty situational of course, but it's nice knowing that you have that option there. So that's kind of like the most potent field you can really go for while also enabling Maelstrom Reverse. So like I said, it was pretty hilarious. You know, my opponents, you know, realized the numbers I was hitting with like Eugen and such, and the combos I was going off. So that's kind of like the best combo you can really go for. Cause like I said, it's really the most potent combo that you can really do. So yeah, like I said, guys, when it comes to combos in this deck, it's just all about just being creative, think outside the box, making the most out of your situations, because, you know, not all the time do we get to, you know, have the perfect setups. So it's really up to you as the player to kind of just be a little creative at times and just figure out what's the best option to go about. So that's one thing, of course, that I've always loved about Aqua Force and why they're one of my favorite clans. So yeah, other than that, guys, that sums up everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. And of course, for all my Aqua Force players out there watching, feel free to leave a comment down below and share with all of us your ideas for Aqua Force and how the deck's been going for you ever since the release of set 15. And of course, if you haven't already, don't forget to give a thumbs up to this video. That's always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you hadn't. Well, other than that, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.